for that previous week. If, they're not approved on time, late payments are not guaranteed. So that's kind of the approval process. For exempt, we don't send out timesheets, but any leave that has been taken typically needs to be submitted after that 15-day period, within a couple days.
Okay, we do have a question. Would we not change student supervisors on the student change form? And Belinda has answered, student supervisors are changed in the student change request form.
Yep.
Yes, I said job change form because I've been dealing with not students this morning, but temporaries. So I apologize for misspeaking about that.
All right. So I'll hand it off to Wanda to talk about direct deposit, and if any other ITAMS questions, we can hold till the end or however you want to do it. So go ahead, Wanda.
Well, let's ask this one question, Wanda, before we get started. Isn't the supervisor assigned in PA, not PeopleSoft, and changed, updated in PA as well?
Oh, that's the one. Belinda answered that one, I believe.
Oh, Belinda already. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but just to reiterate, if the person has a position, then yes, it needs to be updated through admin, and then it'll flow to PeopleSoft. If they don't, such as a student or a temporary non-exempt, then it can be updated on the change form in PeopleSoft.
Okay, great. All right, you're up, Miss Wanda.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to speak a little bit today about direct deposit. The timing for this presentation, we laid this all out before we came to our new normal. But the timing for this is absolutely perfect when it considers the world we're living in now. And we want to ensure that as we go through the process of calculating payroll and making sure everybody's got the right time in and the right codes are set up, that they're actually able to get the payroll. So that's why we want to stress to you, as much as you have contact with your employees, to stress the importance of direct deposit. As everybody knows, direct deposit is a requirement of the university. It's mandatory for all employees. So if you could reach out to your employees, and those that don't have direct deposit, just kind of, remind them and encourage them. We know there may be some that have issues with bank account setups, but there are a lot of options out there these days for individuals if they have bank account issues. You cannot, as a university employee, recommend a particular option to them, but let them know that there's ways that they can research and come up with an option if they cannot get a direct bank account from a bank. I'm going to start a little bit about telling you how to set up a direct deposit. Direct deposit actually comes through the PeopleSoft employee self-service screen, and that's the screen that you see here. You would go to the screen and you would click on payroll. And once you click on payroll, it will give you, Lindsay, if you can go to the next screen, it will give you these options for setting up the direct deposit. Now you have the ability here to set up direct deposit or change direct deposit however you want your direct deposit to flow, if it's to checking and savings, or you have the ability to set up 3 accounts. So currently, as a university employee, you have the ability to have your payroll going to 3 separate bank accounts. It doesn't have to be all at the same bank. They can be at different banks. The process is, though, as you set up a direct deposit, we have to run it through what we call a pre-note. What that means is we have to validate with the bank that the account information that you have entered is accurate and will be accepted by the bank. So that's why we like for you to have this. If any employee is setting up a direct deposit, to have them do it at least 7 days before payroll is set to run. So if we have a payroll that is set on the 30th, we at least need them to have this set up and accurate by the 23rd, so that when we do our pre-note, we will know that it's a valid account, and so that when we send their payroll out, they won't have any issues and their payroll will be accepted at the bank that it's set to. The direct deposit starts with if you get in within that 7-day period, it will start on that upcoming payroll. So if they got it in by the between 20th and the 23rd, we will have it processed by the 30th payroll. We just got to have enough days in order to get it processed through and approved. So that's why if a payroll on the 30th, an employee wants to make a change on the 27th, we can't do that. There's not enough days in order to process that through. So please stress that, because we get a lot of questions about individuals that say, well, I made my payroll, I don't get paid on the 30th, and I made my change to payroll on my direct deposit on the 28th, and that's not enough time in order to process it through our system. So they are still going to get a paper check.
All right, we have a question, Wanda.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, sorry, I'm going back and forth here. Does that time frame apply to international payroll as well?
International payroll in the sense that, yes, we have to have time. Yes, the time frame is the same regardless, because we have to validate it against the bank account. When you say international payroll, do you mean an international bank account? Is that what you're referring to, or a bank account that is for an international student?
She said yes.
Yes, an international bank account. Yeah, but we have, the time frame currently, the time frame is the same. So we have to have that 7-day lead in order to validate that. If I find anything different, I'll let you know.
Our next question is, we have not been informed when a paper check is issued for an employee. Can we get some kind of notification for that? Actually, Laura, I'm going to show you in the upcoming slides where you can access that information.
Yeah, but we do have employee, if an employee is getting a paper check that is not local, within local being Columbia, we do reach out to the different regions to let them know that at the time we send the paper check, we give them a listing, but we can let you know if an employee has a paper check lined up. We have reached out to different locations and let them know that. Now, we have been working very hard on slimming down that list. So the list is not a large list. So I would just say for new employees or employees that anticipating changing bank accounts, it's just important that we stress this. Okay. So for the direct deposit process, there is what we call a direct deposit quick reference guide, and we're going to publish it on the payroll website. I think it's already out on the university's main webpage. It's called Direct Deposit Quick Reference, and we will put a link, make sure that it is a link on the payroll location and within our webpage to get us to this. But the address is sc.edu/about/offices_and/direct/deposit_reference-pdf. But we will publish that
yes,
to this group so that everyone will know how to quickly access this quick reference guide. And this quick reference guide, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And what we'll make sure to do, Wanda, is we'll show them where they can find this recording of this webinar. And just to give you guys a heads up, I did not press the recording button right as we began, as we started, so it doesn't have Jennifer's stories part. Sorry, Jennifer. But we'll make sure that we have the that document linked there as well. And it's also on the HR payroll website, and many of you are familiar with that website. So it's in the employee self-service section of that website.
And this particular quick reference guide will walk an employee through how to add a direct deposit, how to edit a direct deposit in case you stayed at the same bank and you want to change an account number that it needs to go through. And it also shows you how to go through and change to a whole different bank. So this, the quick reference guide actually walks you through that entire process. Does anybody else have any more questions? Our only thing I can say is that we would like for you to reach out to your employees and just encourage them to follow the mandatory rule of having the direct deposit set up. And when you do that, just be conscious of that. There may be some that cannot access a bank, and that you recommend that they go out and research and find other avenues, because there are other avenues to do direct deposits other than just banks. But also be aware that you cannot advocate that they choose one particular option if they cannot get into a bank. So we don't want to do that. Now we want to talk a little bit about overpayments and underpayments, and we've got other payroll staff here to kind of address this issue, because this issue for us is really a hot topic issue. we want to make sure as we go into summer, because last summer we went through our process, and when we did our analysis to close the summer out, we discovered that there may have been some overpayments or underpayments created. And what we want to do is make sure that before we got ready to go into this summer, that we kind of address overpayments and underpayments so that everybody can get kind of an idea of what creates them. And then as we're going through and submitting and creating information for summer positions, that we're on the lookout for these items that could create them, to kind of make sure that we don't cause any grief to the employee because they do run into an overpayment and underpayment situation. Those of you who have worked with them know that is sometimes a challenge when you have to address this type of issue with an employee. So we're trying to get out in front of it. One of the main things we want to talk about for overpayments is that they're created due to late terminations, which means that if an employee termination date paperwork is not submitted timely, then that employee ends up getting paid. And you have to be careful when you're terminating employees around pay date, because if an employee is paid current and he's not terminated in the system, he's going to get paid for that current time. So if you are terminating an employee around a pay date, so let's go back to that 4/30 pay date. If you're terminating an employee around the 4/28 and 4/29, and you don't get that information in the system before the 4/30, he's going to get paid. And if you for that 4/30 pay period, for instance, we confirmed on, and my guys are telling me, we confirmed on 4/27. So because we confirmed that payroll on 4/27, if you terminated anybody after that 4/27 time, he's going to get that 4/30 paycheck. So you got to make sure when you're terminating an employee and you are conscious of the actual pay date and when that employee is going to be paid, so that your paperwork gets put in on time. Are there any questions about that? Because I know I kind of rattled that all together. But you just got to be aware when you're terminating an employee, it's important to get that paperwork in on time. It's important that if you're doing it around a pay date, and we get paid twice a month, and our pay dates are published out on our payroll website, so those dates are known. You just have to be careful when you're doing that, you hit a date that's not going to allow an employee to be overpaid. And you also want to make sure you have the correct time entered in ITAMS. That's why Jennifer went through her presentation about the timing of timesheets, when they have to be entered, when they have to be approved. All that has to be done in a timely manner, and it has to be accurate. So as you go through and you approve your employee's time, that's why she stressed the roles of approver. If you approve your employee's time, you've got to make sure that it's valid, because once again, if we approve incorrect time in ITAMS, that employee gets paid based on the time that you enter in ITAMS, then that employee end up with being paid more than they should have been allowed. For instance, they only worked 20 hours, but we approved 30 hours, and we have 10 hours of overpayment sitting out there on the employee that we will have to go after that employee to collect. Another category is late. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know, go ahead, Wanda, sorry.
Okay. No. Another notification is late notification of leave without pay. It's important that if an employee is placed on leave, that it is all the correct parties are notified. It is entered into PeopleSoft timely, because if it's not put into PeopleSoft timely, we're going to assume that that employee is still entitled to be paid, and we're going to pay them the entire amount that they're due to be paid. So that's why those things are very important from an overpayment perspective. As you're going through and your notification and you're sending information to HR, you're sending information to payroll, that it has to be done timely.
All right, we have some questions, Ms. Wanda. And
yes,
I actually, Belinda, do you have something to say before I start asking the questions?
Just also, you got to be conscious of what, if your employee is on a current pay or on a pay lag with all of these. So that comes into play as well. And I just want to make sure everybody has know that on our HR website, we have deadlines for when these things are to be received by our office, not your office, but by the central HR office. And that is the, that's kind of the Bible for us to allow us to have enough time to get things entered into PeopleSoft. So I just want to make sure everybody knows, and that we don't send out We've stopped doing that for a while now, but it's through the end of the year what the deadlines are for the HR office to have things received by for each payroll.
Thanks, Belinda. That is key. What she says is very key to this process.
Okay, so we have a question. Rebecca's asking if we can receive these PowerPoint documents and the reference tools. Absolutely, Becky. We're going to put these, this PowerPoint presentation, the recording, and anything we referenced in this presentation on the payroll website. So if you just go to the payroll homepage, it'll link you right to where you can find that. Our next question, Wanda, is how can I verify that a 10.5 month employee is paid over 12 months?
Well, if you send us an email, direct that email. We have a payroll department email box with that department's employees' information, and we'll work with you individually to get that verified for you.
All right. Okay, you're good to go, Wanda.
Okay. The next section is underpayments. And once again, it all comes back to paperwork, especially in the summer. Our underpayments are probably more of an issue for us in the summer with the summer paperwork, where we're making sure that we have all the positions listed that the employee expects that they're getting paid for and they're actually set to get paid for. So when you're talking to the employee from a summer perspective, kind of make sure they understand how many classes they're being paid to teach, or how many classes they're being paid to assist in, and so that they have a true anticipation of what their pay should be. Because over the summer, we did get a lot of questions about with employees thinking that they were due to be paid for classes that they were not supposed to be paid for, and then make sure they understand that if a class is canceled, how that works, and all that, so that the underpayment process can be handled a little smoother. So that way it comes to incomplete paperwork, making sure that that paperwork is completed with the correct classes for the correct number of students, and making sure that the employee understands when they're supposed to be teaching it, and out of what, and then when you come to summer econ, out of what grant they're supposed to be paid, and making sure that's well laid out. And it all comes back to paperwork being on time. It kind of, all these things are kind of centered around time. If we can concentrate on following the guidelines that are laid out by HR that Belinda just referred to, making sure the employee themselves understand the timing of when their classes start and when they end, and making sure all the paperwork is turned in timely according to the guidelines set forward by HR, then we're hoping to be able to eliminate as many overpayments and underpayments as possible, not only for the summer, but throughout the entire year.
All right. Actually, Lindsay, if you could go back two more. One more. Perfect. Okay. Forward one more. Perfect. Okay. We do have a question. Shannon's asking, Wanda, is there an option for a supervisor to pull a report for a total number of hours a student has worked under a grant as not to overpay the student?
That would have to come, I will let Lindsay kind of chime in on here, but from this HCM distribution, correct? Or would you point them in another direction, Lindsay?
I'm sorry, could you say the question again?
The question is there an option for a supervisor to pull a report for a total number of hours a student has worked under a grant as not to overpay the student?
I don't know that we could pull a report by number of hours, but you could pull it by pay, the gross pay by grant and by employee using the HCM distribution.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Which hours would be, I mean, pay would be key. That way you can kind of track the amount of gross pay. I don't know if hours, if you needed the hours, you could back into the hours if that was the case based on the hourly pay.
But yeah, I think that it would probably be more meaningful to look at gross pay, you know, since people's pay rates could change or that kind of thing. At least you're knowing the full amount that's being charged to the grant, so that you don't exceed the dollar amount that you want.
Correct.
So they're asking, you know, if it's ever possible, to be able to pull by hours, that would be great. So we have a couple people agreeing. So I don't know, Lindsay, if that's something we can look into for the future.
We'll take that into consideration.
There you go. All right. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about HCM distribution a little bit. Wanda had shared, was sharing direct deposit information, and Lori Gaines had asked a question about whether, how do you know if a person's been paid by a check versus receiving it direct deposit? And you all have access to HCM distribution because it is based on the security that you have in HCM PeopleSoft. And so you can access that by going to the URL I have here at the top, admin.sc.edu, and follow the navigation. And you can put in an employee's name. What's really nice is that USCID is up there. If you don't know their USCID, which majority of the times we do not, you can start with their last name, comma, and start filling in their first name, and it will start scrolling, giving you a list of names to select from. So what's really nice is that you can actually go into this distribution tool. Oh, just a second. I have somebody's sound is, oh, thank you. All right. You can go into this distribution tool, and you can identify whether or not someone has gotten paid with direct deposit or live check. And if you notice, there is a column that will list the check numbers, and any check number that begins with 8 is actually a direct deposit. So, they're good to go. Any check number that begins with the number 7 is indicating that they received a live check. Now, that may be because it's a one-time check or whatever reason that may be. But if it's an employee should have direct deposit information entered into HCM PeopleSoft, then it's a good way to reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed you got paid by a live check. We're really trying to move away from that as an institution. And would you please go in and complete your direct deposit information? All right. I don't know I'm trying to make sure everybody's muted. Please double check to make sure that your sound is off. Thank you. And also, some other ways for business managers and HR contacts to use this HCM distribution. I don't want to go into a lot of detail because we do have a recorded webinar available, and also available for you guys to view. And we also have many resources, a job aid and everything, depending on the role that you play. We have them for HR contacts, if you're a business manager, because you may use it a little differently. So that's all available on the home screen of the controller's website. So you can go out there and access that information there. But just some quick ways you can go into HCM distribution. If you have an employee asking questions, you can make sure that they are receiving the correct pay, that their fringe amounts look accurate. It's also good for you guys to make sure that employees are being paid from the correct funding source. So making sure that you check out that accounting string that's listed there on that screen. And then also, for retro funding changes, which I'm going to talk about next, to make sure that they have been processed and that they're correct. And you're going to be able to identify those retro funding changes pretty easily in this payroll tool, distribution tool, because they're going to be identified with in pink. So Lindsay, if you could go one more and then one more. Perfect. That's where we need to be. Okay. So retro funding changes, we're calling it the current process because the process that we're using today has been in effect since November 26th. So just to give everybody a reminder that the old forms, the old retro payroll manual forms that you were using are no longer accepted. So if you have those somewhere at your desk or somewhere saved on your computer, you can be sure to delete those so that you don't use those by accident. And then also, they're no longer available as an e-form in the HCM PeopleSoft. So just be sure to use the current retro funding change form, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in a few slides. Just a few things. Just be sure to list the original paycheck date, and you'll see where that can go on the form. And then also to be sure to provide supporting documentation. You're going to email those forms to retroje@mailbox.sc.edu, and no manual forms or hard copies will be accepted. Lindsay, if you could just give one more enter, there you go. And please do not email retro funding change forms to two of these email boxes, GFM Pay or Pay JE. We have a specific retro JE box for you guys to send that information to, and it's being monitored all the time. And if you want that retro change process quickly, then getting it to the right mailbox will certainly be a first great step. Okay, next, let's see if we have any questions. All right, so retro funding changes. The controller's office is now going to create the retro journal entry, and Stephanie, I'm getting ready to answer your question. And they're going to post the JE, and they're going to upload all the retros to HCM Distribution. Expect about 2 or 3 days before you can view that change in HCM. So the turnaround time, Stephanie, is about 2 to 3 days. And like I said, they're going to be very easy to identify when they become available in HCM Distrib because they're going to be identified with those pink lines. Please remember to complete those retro account changes within 90 days of the pay date. And if you don't do that, you're going to have to do a little extra work. So please make sure you're getting those in on time. And then also a reminder, and I know this is not new information, but workers' comp and unemployment will post after the 1st and the 15th of the month. Okay, so here is the retro funding change form. And so I have a link here, so when the PowerPoint presentation is posted, you guys can actually get there directly. And this information, retro funding change, is also available on the controller's homepage. There's a drop down there with all this information there. So if we want to look a little closer at the form, which is the next slide, you can see where the paycheck date is going to go. And if you want to do one more click, Lindsay, there you go. And the reminder that the paycheck date is the original pay date, not the retro pay date. So that is something that the controller's office wants you guys to remember when you're filling out this paperwork. Okay, so retro funding changes greater than 90 days. You're going to have to, if you don't get those within that 90-day period, then you are required to complete a cost transfer memo and to provide that with the retro JE. And so in that memo, you're going to have to make sure that you're answering the 4 questions that are listed here. So it is a little extra work on your part if you don't get those in within that required 90 days. All right, do you guys have any questions before I pass it over to Lindsay? All right, it looks pretty quiet. Okay, Lindsay, it's yours.
All right. We've had, several questions since Go Live about how you can, easily determine the funding behind a combo code, or vice versa, how to look up the related combo code for a funding stream, especially when you're doing manual forms. When you're doing the EPAF forms, it should populate as you type in the funding, but for summer pay and other manual exceptions, knowing the proper combo code is essential. So what we did was create another role in HCM, and most business managers and HR contacts should already have this role. And we created a combo code query so that you can go and look up all of your active combo codes at any time and look at the associated funding string in order to determine which combo code you want to use for that specific pay. So I'm going to show you live in HCM how to get to this query. Can y'all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you have PeopleSoft up on your screen?
Yes.
Because we can't see that.
Okay. Bear with me here.
Yep. You are good. We can see PeopleSoft.
All right. So from your main menu, you're going to navigate to Reporting Tools, Query, then Query Manager. And can type in, if you know the query name, you can type that in. Otherwise, you can search for it by using the wildcard and combo. And
Just a quick, let me input just a little, just for a second, Lindsay. Some of you actually may not have Query Manager. Some of you may have Query Viewer, and I think you can access it that way as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so then you go to the combo code query and click run, and you can search by a specific department ID or a specific operating unit. And it's defaulting to active combo codes, but if you ever need to look back at one for historical purposes, you can look up inactive combo codes as well. Then once you click OK, it will run, and you can either download this to Excel or just search on the screen for the combo code that you're needing. Any questions about that? No?
So someone is asking, is this the same? SC underscore combo underscore codes underscore 4 underscore HCM. Can you go through, Lindsay, can you go through Query Viewer and run through that process again? Because it looks a little different for users that don't have the Query Manager.
So it's this combo codes right here. SC combo codes.
Okay, so Amanda, if you're not, yes, you do have to be in HCM PeopleSoft, not Finance PeopleSoft. So that's a good point. But Amanda, if this is a query that you don't have access to, we can reach out to you and make sure that you can get that role in HCM to have that access. I got your name listed here, Amanda. You're welcome. Okay.
All right, we good?
Yep, we're good.
All right, let me switch back to the PowerPoint. Okay,
guys, we are pretty much to the end of this presentation. So I don't know if you have any questions, or you do have Belinda, Jennifer, Lindsay, and Wanda on this presentation. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, I would take the opportunity.
Joanne, it looks like a question came in on another chat, but I think it's for this payroll one. And the question is concerning the JE retro funding. Is it 90 days from the begin date or 90 days from the end date?
Lindsay, I think you'd probably be best to answer that question.
It is 90 days from the day that of the payday. So when the check was actually issued.
Okay. Thank you, Belinda, for monitoring that. I appreciate it.
No, it was on it was in the FFCR training one. So there's been so many going on with us being remote. I think some just got a little confused, which is, I do that daily.
And sounds good. Jessica, and I had that exact same conversation last night. So, all right. Any other questions before? So this is where you're going to find those resources that we've talked about. If you
Joanne,
go, yes.
There's another one out there.
Okay, go ahead.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where you're finding those, so you may have to read
this is in the chat room. This is in the chat room for this one now. The other one was on another webinar.
Oh, so are you talking about
for the payroll? Yeah, there's about a couple of questions popping up.
Okay. So I got Stephanie's. We answered Stephanie's, the turnaround time after submitting the form. We got to Amanda's. I know many things were forced to be electronic due to the pandemic, but is there an initiative to keep as much? Shannon, I'm not quite understanding your question. If you want to clarify, that'd be great. And Stephanie's asking, can you clarify when the check is issued? And so I think, Stephanie, we answered your question, or when the actual payroll should be charged. Are you asking about the retro JE? Yes. And I think that question was answered for you, correct? Okay. And Amanda O'Connor is saying she found the needed query, which is fantastic. See more on the previous question. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lori. I know many things were forced to be electronic due to the pandemic, but is there any initiative to keep as much electronic as possible once we return to normal operations? Well, I'll let you ladies answer that question.
From my standpoint, yes, that is the goal, to keep as much electronic as possible. It's a lot easier, for instance, to track things. And that's why we did that with the retro JE mailbox, and why we're not accepting paper copies. When there's paper and electronic going on, it makes it a lot more likely to, insert a duplicate transaction or things like that. So electronic monitoring of communication and forms is easier from our standpoint.
Okay.
Yes, and this is Wanda. I was in the office yesterday for a little while, and there's maybe one or two other staff members, and we were talking about all the efficiencies that have been gained. Because when you are in separate locations working remotely, you have to develop efficiencies for processes to run. And a large part of it was electronic things that are now scanned in order to be shared and reviewed for us. And we didn't want to lose that. So I'm going to add on to Lindsay and say, yeah, as many efficiencies as we gain, not just with the electronic, even with mailing out checks and paychecks directly and things of that nature, we're going to hold on to as many of those efficiencies that are correct and the right thing to do. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll make some positives come out of this coronavirus, if nothing else.
Absolutely. And I think down the road too, guys, you'll see that we'll be using Teams meetings in the future for any of our webinars that we're going to be doing. Because I hear that Adobe Connect is not going to be supported after next year. So and you guys are getting so used to this right now with us being out of the office and off campus. So absolutely. I think you're going to see a few things change. Lindsay, Stephanie's asking 90 days after the actual charge for a retro JE.
Yes, the 90-day rule applies to 90 days after the original check is issued.
Okay. When a live check is issued, is the employee responsible to pick it up in person?
No, we are actually mailing those. So one of the things I probably should have mentioned when I was addressing direct deposit is we have to make sure that employees have the correct mailing address in the PeopleSoft system. So when we actually get a check now, our process is to go through and mail those out to the employee based on the address that's in the PeopleSoft system. Great.
Next question is, when we view, you're welcome, Lori. When we view the chart field data, is there a reason why account code is not included on the accounting string?
I can ask Richard about that, but I think it has made it easier for him to kind of put the subtotals and filters on there by not including the account code. But I mean, it's certainly something that I can ask him about.
Okay. And Melissa is asking, is the paycheck mailed out on pay date?
We try to mail them the day before payday. We have to be careful because we don't want them to be delivered, prior to payday if possible. So we try to mail them out the day before payday.
Okay. Any more questions, guys? I hope I've answered everybody's questions. Belinda was doing a good job making sure I was getting everything.
She's a great partner.
She is. Awesome. All right. You're welcome, Upstate. Thank you. You're welcome, Shannon. Yeah. All right. So it sounds like we are at the end of our presentation. Thank you. We had 129 people for our very first one using Teams meetings, and I think we did pretty good. That's awesome. All right, guys. Have a great. Yes.
Do you want to just walk through the contact information in case there's?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Questions? Sorry about that. Go to the next slide. So for any contacts, so if you have any questions about W-4s, please email Jake Keel. For any questions regarding W-2s, additional pay, and the pay cycle, Wanda Martin's your person. And direct deposit, we have a specific email, uscpay@mailbox.sc.edu. And then for questions regarding ITAMS, reach out to Judy Timmons, and we have her email address here as well. All right. And I think our last slide is our question mark, which I think we're good to go. So if nobody has any more questions, we're going to say have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.